when I stopped jumping out of bed in the morning, when I started hitting the snooze button, when the things that used to excite me became exhausting to me, that was the signal that I needed to take a look at what I was doing because I wasn't willing to continue that way. So something needed to change. That doesn't mean I needed to change my career, but something needed to change.
Hi, Randy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Mark. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you as well. Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. I have to start by asking, what does peak performance mean to you?
I think peak performance means doing more than you believed you could. Whatever that is, whatever you're digging in on, like we all have belief in our abilities at different levels. And then a situation, say, where you're playing tennis with somebody who's at a greater skill level and you up your game. It's that kind of a feeling. It's doing more than you believed you could in that situation. And there's so much to be learned. The benefit of whatever you're contributing is obvious, but there's just so much to be learned from it. So I think that's how I define it.
Are there any drawbacks to believing you can do more than what you're doing?
Sure, maybe you end up disappointed because not every effort lands where you want it to land. And there may be some things that your will is greater than your talent or your skill, like those times exist. But you know what? Disappointment never killed anybody. We can get through it, we can learn from it, we can push harder. And sometimes you decide that whatever it is you're doing, that's not your thing. Let the experts do that. I'm going to be directing my effort elsewhere. Is there a downside? Sure, but I think it's a really minimal one.
So, regardless the downside or the upside, it's something that we must do because it's the only way we challenge ourselves to see what we're made of. So many people go through life thinking, I know I'm meant to do more. But that's where it ends. They don't know what to do or how to go about it. So if someone is listening to this and they're saying, yes, I want to be a peak performer, I believe I can do more, but I don't know what to do. What would you, as an executive and a career life coach, advise is the first place they start at?
I'm a big believer in pay attention to your reactions to things. Pay attention to what gives you energy versus what drains your energy. And go to the things that give you energy because that's where either your passion is or your skill or your natural talent or just your interest. That's going to be the thing that you want to work hard at because I agree with you. There's a lot of people that may say, I want to excel at this. I want to find my area of peak performance, whatever. But the thinking of it isn't enough. You got to put the work in. So you may as well put the work into something that you are fired up about, something that lights you up. That's why I do this work. I want to see people lit up.
You made a transition from a high powered executive role in the pharmaceutical industry to becoming an executive and a career life coach. What was the reason behind that? Because you were already very accomplished in your previous life.
I was, and I loved it. Oh my gosh, I loved almost every day of that 30-year career. I was one of those crazy people that jumped out of bed before the alarm every morning, couldn't wait to get to work. I was as excited on Monday morning as I was on Friday afternoon. Like I loved it. And I'm fortunate. I was very successful at it, both in terms of my sense of accomplishment and financially. And so that gave me a cushion. That gave me a perch upon which to think about what was next. What did I want to, was it time to take a risk on something? And going back to my thing of paying attention to your reactions, when I stopped jumping out of bed in the morning, when I started hitting the snooze button, when the things that used to excite me became exhausting to me, that was the signal that I needed to take a look at what I was doing because I wasn't willing to continue that way. So something needed to change. That doesn't mean I needed to change my career, but something needed to change. So I had to do some soul searching, figure out what that was. And my journey led me to leave the corporate world and start my own business. And now I have always been a person that has needed to do some good while I'm doing well, which is why I loved pharma. It's about healthcare. It's about making people's lives better. It's amazing. And now the good that I do in this phase of my career is satisfied differently. I help other people achieve their goals. I help other people get relit up, if that's a word, find that excitement that they used to have in whatever way fits them at this point in their lives. And I'm back to jumping out of bed every morning.
Let's talk about that, the jumping out of bed every morning. For your situation, you had already had an illustrious career. You graduated from Wharton with a business degree. You were very successful, and it made sense that after a certain number of years in the industry, you wanted to do something different, wanted to
Mhm.
do something more impactful. But is it always a good idea to chase the feeling of jumping out of bed? The equivalent of that in relationship is that I don't feel the butterflies in my stomach in the relationship anymore, so I need to quit. So how does, because we get bored with things, it's just what life is. How do I determine that I'm getting bored with this, but I need to continue with this? Or maybe this is a sign that I need to move on.
Yeah, I love that analogy you just made about the relationship because it really is, there's similar dynamics there. And the truth is, from what I have experienced and what I've seen in my clients, there's no one answer. There and some for some people there's more than one answer. So I think what it comes down to is figuring out what it was that used to light you up and what has changed. Like you may have changed. What you need at a new phase of your life may have changed. If you're a person, like I know this about you, Mark, that you're a person driven by accomplishments and you love to go for the hard stuff. Say you take on the job you think you always wanted. This is my big career goal, and you've done it for a while and you're really good at it. There may not be that upside for you. There may not be that stretch anymore. It may be too easy. That it may be a risk to stay in that situation. So you got to think about what it is that motivates you, what drives you, and create that situation for yourself again. Now, sometimes it's possible to recreate that situation right where you are. And actually, you know what? Let me take a step back because maybe that's not true for everybody. Maybe there are times where you don't need that anymore. And but again, it goes back to the soul searching of seeing maybe you're at a point in your life where the butterflies no longer feel like excitement, they feel like anxiety. Maybe what you want is for things to be a little bit easier. And then that's what you should go for. It's almost like doing that exploratory work to figure out what is that answer for you and creating that situation. The things that fulfill you and that you need in your life, Mark, are very different than the things that fulfill me and I need in my life. But one is no more right than the other. It's just what fits us.
Process of obtaining clarity is one of those things like falling in love. It's simple, talk about, but it's like mystical as to how it happens.
Yeah, it is.
So, how do you help clients who are feeling stuck and unmotivated in their careers? Where do you start with them to help them find that clarity?
I think it's a great question because it can feel mystical. It can feel enormous and overwhelming, and it can feel almost like an existential crisis. What am I doing here? What am I meant to be here for? All of that. And if we get overwhelmed, for some people that big meaty question is motivating, but for a lot of us it can cause paralysis. So breaking it down as you said, what's the first step is a great way to think about it because just taking that action can break you loose and get you moving forward. I have found with my clients a great place to start is to take a look at your current situation and identify what is working because there have to be things that are working for you. It's not like the whole world has changed. What are the things that are still working for you? And that's important because then you know what are the things to preserve? What are the things to look for in the next situation if you decide to make a move? Likewise, take a look at what has changed. What is no longer working for you? If you're fortunate like I was, you know what that feels like. You know what that excitement is that I can't wait to get to work in the morning. So you can take a look at what has changed and what's missing. It might be what's irritating to me, what's no longer values aligned. Like the answer to that will be different for different people, but understanding what's not working is equally as important as understanding what is working so that you know what to fix. Otherwise, you may change your situation and take the problem with you. You may find yourself in a similar pattern. So you're recreating whatever it isn't working for you. So you have to do the work. You have to look inside. And I have found that it's much easier to do that. Get out of your own head and talk about it with someone else. Now, I have a bias for coaching. There's no question, but it's not because I am a coach. The reason I am a coach is because I know what a difference it makes. It's flipped on its head for me. But I think it's really important to get out of your own head and have conversations with a trusted partner about what are these things you're thinking about. Just verbalizing it and getting it out in the world unlocks the thoughts somehow.
So many of us pick a major in college just because we were good at that subject in high school. And someone said, you should really pursue it. You're good at it. Doesn't mean that we're passionate about it or we enjoy it. Similarly, there's so many people who are just going through career milestones instead of truly enjoying the journey. So, how do you help that person identify if you're just going through the milestones, achieving things, rising up the ranks versus what could potentially bring them true enjoyment?
Yeah.
Because some of them are almost always jaded at that point.
It's a good question because sometimes the advancement, the accolades, the financial rewards, promotions, whatever that is, can almost become addictive. And you go after that, I don't know about blindly, taking your glasses off and it's a little fuzzy. You just go after it without really thinking about what is it. And I think that's a lot of times when people have what we refer to as a midlife crisis or a mid-career crisis. You wake up, you go, whoa, whoa, something's not. It's important to be conscious about how we're taking these things on and moving forward. And then in terms of, are you going for something that because you're told you're good at it, you're good at it, whether or not you have a passion for it. That question can become more and less important at different phases of your life. And so it's important to think about almost like the foundation of your life, not just your work. Because, for example, when you're at a phase where you may be starting out in your career, it may feel like you could take a big risk and do something wild because you don't have a lot to lose. Okay, that's right. I've been there. I felt that. Then when you get to the phase of life that many people get to where you've got a mortgage, you may have kids, you have a family to support, you're thinking about college, whatever that is, you may feel much less willing to take a risk. Your level of risk aversion dials up. But then you may get to a point where you can take a risk again. And so you can look at those questions about, and this was what I did, was when I got to a certain point of success, of accomplishment, I was able to indulge, if you will, the questions about, wait a minute, what's really going to be fulfilling to me in the next chapter of my career? And I was really fortunate. I was able to take that risk. I had a financial cushion. I had a supportive spouse, like all the things were in place, but I went into it eyes wide open. So I think it's important for people to take a look at, like, diagnose where they are at that phase of their life. And if they're going through the motions to get the promotions, to earn the money to support for their family, and maybe it's not as exciting to them, it may still be the right thing to do, but they may be able to build that excitement in other ways or that fulfillment. It might look like giving back to their community in some way or taking on a physical challenge like sports or something like that. Once you understand what it is you need, you can put the mosaic together in a way that fits. It doesn't necessarily have to be satisfied just in one place.
When you talk about these things, there is such clarity in your voice, which is a reflection of the logical thinking you have. But there is also a warmth about how you approach it. There's a lot of kindness and compassion. How did you get to be this person you are today?
First of all, thank you. It's nice to hear because that's how I feel, and it's nice to hear that reflected. Boy, we are all on a journey, and it for those of us that want to have an answer to that question, like how did we get to be? It takes a lot of work to think about it. And for me, the answer is everything from the message that I took from the universe when I was 7 years old and my family broke up. That was a big foundation of who I am. Working my way through, I graduated high school and went off to college when I was 16. That was an interesting experience. And then all the things that I've worked for since then and accomplished, everything, if you're willing to mine the experiences, everything builds up to where you are. And then when I left corporate, I think I was a little harder, if you will. I had to compete in a different kind of a world, navigate a lot of politics and things like that in the corporate world, and I was good at it, but it takes a certain armor. And now the last 7 years, I've been really focused on helping other people achieve their goals and worked a great deal on my coaching skills. And I think I've allowed myself to bring out that warmth and caring and that willingness to take a risk and be wrong and explore things in a way that I didn't have the luxury to do in my first career, if you will. There's not a lot of wiggle room. If you're a corporate executive, you have to a great extent, you have to know the answer. or you expect yourself to know the answer. And I think, as I said it before, you have to wear a certain armor that now, running my own business, being an entrepreneur, living a different world, I don't have to wear that if I don't choose to. So I do feel a very different person. And my second career is as fulfilling as my first was, but in a very different way.
When you say if we are willing to mine our experiences, we can build a life based on that. What does that mean, mining our experiences?
I think this comes from a belief of mine. It's not everything happens for a reason, that sort of predestined sense or very strong religious belief in a higher power, whatever that is. I'm not one of these people that's blessed with that. I got to work harder at it. So for me, it's not everything happens for a reason. It's for everything that happens, you can find a reason. You can find the meaning. And I think there are pivotal moments in our lives where we don't always recognize at the moment when they're happening that they are those pivotal moments. But looking back on them, if we're willing to explore the experience and really figure out what that meaning is for us and how that can change us and how that can help us grow, you will find it. And sometimes those are the most difficult things. Sometimes they're the fun things, but sometimes they're the really difficult things. And I can share my own experience. Over the last 2 years, I've had my own journey with cancer. And I'm very fortunate. I'm in remission. I'm healthy. But that experience will change you for the good if you let it. And I was committed. I knew very clearly that I had no choice but to go through this. I guess my choice could have been to wither away and not deal with it. That wasn't a choice for me. I had to face it somehow. My choice was, how did I face it? And I went into it committed to finding gratitude everywhere I looked. And it started with gratitude that I had caring and skilled healthcare providers, gratitude that I had a personal support system, gratitude that I had a business situation that would allow me to flex it as I needed to. I didn't know what was coming and I knew I wanted to keep working and all of those things. Gratitude for super expensive health insurance. Never thought I'd say that. And that has stuck with me and served me because I needed to find meaning in that. This sense of gratitude is everywhere I look. And sometimes I test myself like, wow, that situation was really tough. What is there to be grateful for? And if you are looking, you will find it. And it's just like a commitment that I make to myself. And it makes things easier. It makes me happier. It just works. So I think that's a really tangible example of what I mean by mining the situation, mining the experience.
When you look at other experiences in your life where something challenging was happening, did you find gratitude in the moment of the challenge? Or was it in retrospect when you were looking back at it that you realized that I was thankful that happened?
It's a great question. I think it takes a little bit of practice to build this muscle. At least it did for me. In some ways, it was instinctive. But then I really paid attention to it and dialed into it and realized that it was a good thing for me. And so now it's a conscious choice, but I almost don't have to make the choice anymore because it's so much a part of who I am. Sometimes it's harder than others, but if sometimes you have to deal with the crisis and catch your breath, but then looking back on it, there is something. There is. Sometimes it's wow, I found my way through it and now I can help other people through it. My experience with going through cancer, like I made a big donation at the end of the year to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. They called me to find out why did I make the donation and what was my story. And now I'm doing advocacy work for them. So I can help other people who may not have had the resources and support that I had. That's just because I was committed to making something good out of that situation. And it's not like I'm this shining paragon of virtue in this regard. It's just a choice that I've made for myself.
Entrepreneurship such a hard thing, especially in the beginning levels when we're just getting started out. There is syndrome, there is I'm never going to be able to figure it out, others can do this, why can't I? And even when we have these small wins, we are so obsessed with all the things that are not working that we forget to celebrate these little wins. If I am someone listening to this podcast and I'm thinking, Randy, I am that one of those people. I can't find gratitude in the moment. I'm just always unhappy. My husband tells me, my wife tells me, my partner tells me, come on, look at the brighter side of things. What are some things that this person can do that mind?
Yeah, there are definitely things that we can do. And I'll tell you a little bit about a tool that I use with my clients. And I started using it because my own coach used it with me. It's called a traction report. It doesn't really matter all of the details of it. It's really what it just says is to keep moving from one coaching session, one initiative to the next. And the first question that clients, they reflect on these questions before our session. The first question is, what's new and good since your last session? And sometimes it's really easy to find them. It might be big things. I signed 2 new clients. I facilitated that corporate workshop that I've been working on for 3 months. I signed a new book deal, whatever. They could be big, shining things. And sometimes they're really hard to find. So you got to challenge yourself. Sometimes it could be as simple as I took that huge load of dry cleaning that's been waiting to go to the dry cleaner and now it's hanging clean in the closet. That's a ridiculous example. But sometimes you have to find something very small and very tangible, but you will find it. It might be I ate healthy meals every day this week. If you look for it, you will find the thing. And sometimes it's one foot in front of the other. Okay, I found that little thing. What's the next thing? And when you get yourself in the habit of looking for those things, you'll identify them in the moment. Like I know I see clients have made a transformation when they're thinking about the things when they're happening and they'll jump into their traction report and capture it right then. We don't talk about it for 2 weeks, maybe, but it's becoming a habit that they're building. So I think start small. Don't expect yourself to cure cancer or split the atom every 2 weeks. Sometimes it's really small, like I got everything on my to-do list done, or I reached out to 3 people that I've been wanting to network with in the last whatever it is. It could be something small, but it's a start.
Whoever we are, however old we are when we're listening to this, we've been conditioned to a way of thinking for a very long time. Sometimes the voices in our head, despite us trying us so much, pulls us back.
Oh my
So I
gosh, yeah.
love the example that you gave about being mindful and being observant and being keeping track of the little things that are happening and finding reasons to be successful, happy with them and grateful with them. Sometimes it happens, it hasn't happened with me. It happens with me like you get on this path and then the hooks of the past dig into your back and you pull you back. So, what are some pattern interrupts or any other techniques that you suggest we can utilize to stop those hooks from pulling us back?
Yeah, it's such a visual. It's so true what you're saying about the hooks that pull us back. And the truth is, the hooks are in our head. Like we are the things getting in our way, so we can get out of our way, but you need some tricks to do it. And one of the things that I find really helpful is you have to identify what that is, what that thing is. And I'll share a personal example. So when I left the corporate world and I was convinced of my own importance and was running billion-dollar businesses, I had hundreds of people in my organization. I was somebody who was important. And then I walk out of that world and I go into a spare room of my home that I have outfitted as an office and I convince myself I'm running a business, right? It takes a little while to make that mind shift. And what my problem was, the hook that was holding me back, the way I was getting in my own way, was I expected everything to be perfect before I introduced it to the world. I thought people were going to judge me. They were going to expect what I used to deliver when I had hundreds of people to help me with it. And what were they going to think about what I was doing? And I was absolutely getting in my own way. And what I realized was I needed to change my self-definition almost. Rather than identify as someone who who delivered everything in a really good way. Perfect is overstating it, but in a really successful way, almost everything I did. Rather than be that person, I started to identify myself as someone who was really good at fixing things when they didn't go quite right. And so then I almost became wow, that didn't go quite right. That's great. How are we going to fix it? It almost became a game. It almost became something that motivated me. And when I got to that point, I no longer held myself to a standard of, oh, this Oxford educated writer needs to edit this before it goes out into the world. It needs to go before a presidential panel of think tank or whatever. It's not about that. It's about trying to make incremental difference for people and offering something that can make them more successful. And so when I shifted my need to have it right and really identified with my ability to fix things when they're not quite right, it unlocked everything. It has made such a difference in enabling me to find my voice. It has enabled me to learn from mistakes rather than regret mistakes. And I think it has made me a better coach because if you're more forgiving of yourself, you can be more accepting and open to the experience of others.
How did you get out of your own way to become such malleable and pliable? Because this is not an easy task.
It's not an easy task. I have a brilliant coach. I really do. The woman that I work with, it's business coaching, but she's made an enormous difference for me, really helped me make that mindset shift and motivated me not just for myself, but motivates me every day to help my clients in the ways that they need it. Because you're right, that imposter syndrome or those hooks, the ways that we hold ourselves back, that's the biggest challenge we have. The people that you and I work with are very capable. The people listening to us today, very capable, very skilled, very creative, very successful. The things that get in our way are us. So you got to figure out what they are, take it on as a game or a challenge. You can get past it just like you've gotten past the other challenges in your life. For yourself, Mark, you have accomplished remarkable things. You have probably accomplished more than you ever thought you could. And the way you've done that is by getting out of your own way and taking it on and keeping going. It's such a privilege to help people do that.
You talk about bringing all of ourselves into our personal and professional lives. What are some practical steps we can do to align those two areas?
I think we can all think about people say, what is your superpower? What does that really mean? To me, when I think about a superpower, it's what do you do really well that most people don't do really well? Right? You're not the only person in the world that does it, but what is that for you? And when you figure out what those things are, use those skills, those talents in every aspect of your life. Let's say gratitude is one of my superpowers based on the example that we talked about before. I really do lead with gratitude. That's not just a skill that makes me a nice person to be around or a supportive person or whatever. That's a skill that I have that I can bring to every area of my life. To my personal relationships, in some ways, it's very easy that way. But even to leadership and to tough situations, you can bring gratitude. Even if you're in a situation where there's a performance issue to be managed, someone's not doing well enough in certain areas, there are still things to be grateful for. It might be the effort, even if it didn't land where it needed to be. And leaning into that gratitude, even in those tough leadership challenges, can open the door for the kinds of communication you need to have to really understand each other and give the other person the best chance of bringing up their game. So that's one of the things that I mean is figure out what your superpower is and use it in all of those aspects of your life.
Having worked with so many executives in helping them get to the next level, what are some of the challenges that you see are very common and it's repetitive?
I think we've talked about it a little bit already. I think this imposter syndrome, this us getting in our own way. One of the things that people don't realize is, and I'm not going to say everybody, but most people experience that. I remember this is one of the reasons that I started a coaching business. When I had just taken on a new big level of responsibility in the corporate world, that's a moment. Luckily, I had a coach that was part of the program. This company invested a lot in development and support. So I had a coach at that moment. And I will never forget feeling like just at the moment when I expected myself to know what to do, I didn't know what to do. And luckily I had this person that was a safe space for me to have those discussions with, because you're trying to look good, right? You're trying to look like master of the universe. You've got it together. You know exactly what to do. People are depending on me to know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And I had this safe space to talk to her about it. And I'll never forget a conversation we had when I said, right now, I feel a little lost. I feel a little adrift. Does everybody feel this way? Because I look around and I don't see people that feel this way. And she goes, oh, yeah, everybody feels this way. But some people are better at dealing with it and hiding it than others. And hiding it isn't necessarily the best thing. It's addressing it and figuring out how to work with it. And for me, what that came to look like was bringing other people in, making sure we had the best ideas at the table, making sure that I was delegating and setting clear direction and letting others run with it. I didn't have to do it all. The team together is so much more capable and creative than any one of us. So actually digging into that self-doubt helped me become a better leader by putting the support, the resources around me to deal with it. It developed my team. It brought us up. It raised all of our game. So it doesn't mean it was fun to go through. But by being willing to look at it and work on it, it was another one of those things that served me. I found the meaning because I was willing to look for it.
The story that you said about going into a safe place, talking to somebody who can understand you, being able to talk to them about how you're feeling requires a lot of vulnerability, requires a lot of openness. Sometimes that doesn't come automatically. for some people. Men, especially, have a difficult time admitting that they are going through a challenge. They won't even ask for directions, as we know the cliche is,
I've
right?
heard that. I've heard that.
How do you go about helping those leaders not easy to open up, who are not
Yeah.
vulnerable, who are hiding things behind a stone wall, perhaps because of their ego, perhaps because of their fear? How do you help them?
I think it's a really important point. And it's one of those things where when I first started working with C-suite executives, that level of folks, I wasn't sure. Like at the beginning, I got to prove that I'm a good coach here. How am I going to handle this situation? And when I became more confident and was willing to make myself more vulnerable, I was able to center the client a little bit more and stay with where they were. I think sometimes it's sharing the experience that I've seen in others. The simple thing that I just said to you when I talked to my coach and I said, wait a minute, I'm feeling unsure here. Does everybody feel that way? Hearing her say, yeah, most people do feel that way at times. It's just a matter of how are we going to cope with that situation. And in fact, that situation of not knowing may be motivating because it means you're growing and stretching. Like embracing that really helps. And sharing that insight with others can really help them to be able to ask for help and acknowledge that maybe they don't have all the answers themselves. Very few of us are strong enough to figure this all out on our own, and it can be pretty lonely if you try. I give credit for people who may ask the question. Hopefully, they have that safe thought partner, whoever that is, that they can talk to about. For some executives, it may be people that have walked the path before them. Those may be the people to whom they're least likely to ask the question. It's a bit individual, but hopefully they're able to open up a little bit and hear that others have experienced that. And that really can shortcut the learning process and can catapult them to a new level of contribution and impact, which is what they want. That's what they're there for. Sometimes that's a good way to do it, is to share the experience that others have and how it can really allow that transformation. But I think you're right about that vulnerability is hard. And this is it's a small example because it impacts me, but I think it is illustrative, which is the things that you and I have talked about. I've made myself very vulnerable during this conversation and it's public. I don't know who's listening to it. And I don't worry about that anymore. I did when I first started doing this because I worried about what people thought. But now I recognize that the right people, the people that need that message, the people for whom that message will resonate, it will mean something to them. It has the potential to help them. So why not offer that up? Me making myself vulnerable is almost not an issue anymore.
Where are you going with this executive leadership coaching?
I want to help more people. That's why I do this work, is to help people feel as excited about their work as I do. And I want to help more. And that's why I do some of the things. I do one-on-one coaching. The scale of that is small. The impact is powerful, but you impact people one at a time. I also work with corporate leadership teams. That impact is a little bit bigger. But then I do things similar to what you do, is I put material out there in writing. I put out videos. I do a podcast. I try and share the ideas, share the support with the people who need it. So that's really what it is. I want to help more people. And that I'm at the point in my career where I'm building a legacy. I'm looking to help other people find their fulfillment and things. So it's a really nice place to be. Is to be able, it's a very privileged position to not have to worry about the money and not do it. The money's important. Like the revenue that I generate through my business is important because it's tangible evidence of the value I'm putting out there in the world. But I'm fortunate that I don't need it to feed my family. And it took me a while to figure that one out too. But it feels like I've worked for 30, 40 years to get to this point, and I really treasure it.
Randy, we're living in a world where everybody's chasing for retirement. Everybody's waiting until the day comes where they don't have to work anymore, where they could just sit there and do nothing. It's refreshing to see someone like yourself who, after being so accomplished in her previous career, is still motivated, passionate, and perhaps even more passionate, pursuing something completely new when she doesn't have to. The idea of work has become in our society something that we must do to feed ourselves. But it says a lot about a person who chooses to work and be in service of others, even when they don't need to. So it's a pleasure and an honor having you on the show and getting to understand you a little bit. What last words do you have for our audience members?
I think give yourself permission to prioritize what you love. because you can find a way to build that into your life to a greater degree. Either it's through your work, it's through your connections with others, it's through your community. Give yourself permission to make those things important and let those things be a driver.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Randy. It was a pleasure having you. I hope to
It
talk to you
was,
soon again.
thank you, Marco. It was really delightful. I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you.